In today's Mattcast, I'm talking to one of the most legendary artists in Magic the Gathering, Drew Tucker, who goes all the way back to Alpha and Beta and has even created some art for Modern Horizons 2. We talk about his inspirations, his past art, and his favorite pieces from Magic the Gathering. It's coming up next. Welcome back to another Mattcast. I am absolutely thrilled to bring our first artist guest onto the Mattcast. It is Drew Tucker. He is a very iconic artist that goes all the way back to Alpha and Beta. Drew, thank you so much for joining the Mattcast today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Now, what actually inspired you to create your art?
Yeah, right. Like that's a long question. There's like so many different things, like because like I don't know, it's something I never stopped like making, right? Like and doing like so yeah, sorry for all of this because it's gonna be like long and like a circle and stupid.
Oh, this is why the Mattcast is great.
But yeah, like I guess like the pat answer would be like, like I always made art, like, as you're a little kid, you draw. And I pretty much didn't stop. And then, and there was part of me, I really like stories, right? And a lot of growing up was about stories. But I for illustration, I so lucked into this. I was always doing kind of like fantasy or kind of like a little darker angsty stuff because I was like, I was in my 20s. About that time I was so super like your 20s, right? Like or 18 and young and like pissed and everything's wrong and fuck them and so like I put all that in my artwork, right? Like I started school when I started college. I started for graphic design, and we had these old school guys, John Yak and Mr. Mayu, which means nothing to anybody, but they were like these instructors, and David White and some other guys, but they were old 1950s like graphic designers. So like we learned how to do type by hand, all this crazy stuff, and logo work, and I didn't quite like designing, right? And so I stayed in school forever. I could have been like, if I was that guy, right? Or on that path, I could have been a doctor, but no, I stayed in for art, right? So I went to some other places for fine art, and then I got married like in the 90s, and we moved up to Seattle, and I still hadn't because like I said, I was in like school forever, but I still hadn't like graduated. So there was a Cornish College of the Arts up in Seattle on Capitol Hill. And so that's where I went for illustration because, I'm not, I have a fine art sort of bend to me, but I'm not like a fine artist. I don't have anything to say like that. Or at least I don't think I do. I don't know. But so like I was in college at Cornish College of the Arts, and in a watercolor class with Sandra Everingham, who was a lot of us went to that same school. And one day after class, she asked if I'd make a portfolio because they had this game going, and they needed illustrators or illustrations. So yeah, like I so lucked into it. I always kind of like wanted to be a children's illustrator, which is kind of funny to say.
In a weird way, Magic Gathering art can actually go into that realm too. In a way, younger and younger players are getting to the game.
It is, and I like that too. But yeah, it's because growing up, I think it was like like that was the kind of illustrations, because you're like growing up, and so I'm looking at a lot of that stuff, and a lot of myth. I grew up in a really religious family.
Okay.
Yeah, very Southern Baptist, and which is cool for those guys. Um, and so somewhere in there is the structure of like stories. I think maybe some of it's because of that. And like you're always getting these like if you go to Sunday school when you're a little kid, they have like these little Sunday school books, and the illustrations. And so, I'm always looking at paintings. There's other weird side stories about artwork in my household growing up because where there's this book that got hidden. It was just this classic book of fine art, and I was looking at that like like one after church or something like Sunday morning, and like the next day it was gone. It totally like disappeared, and my mom denied ever seeing this book. And so
Yeah.
I recently found it like in her house, so like I yanked it. Where's my kid?
Oh yeah.
But yeah.
I heard the footsteps.
But yeah, like in some ways art was like kind of weirdly taboo. Right. And I think that was like it was also a strange driving
Is it
force for a
specific
lot
art
of
was
people.
taboo? Like art that wasn't religious, was that taboo?
Yeah, but like then there's a joke, and it's not a joke necessarily, but like and I think it was Howard Lyon that brought it up, was that fantasy art and religious art are relatively the same. If you think about it, like there's dragons and devils and demons, there's dragons and devils and demons. It's all the same stuff, really.
Yeah, like the Renaissance
just the
era.
story changes,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And what you decide is a true myth or not, or a true story. I don't know. So none of that answers the question of like why I got into
No,
art, right?
you told me so much information, and they all kind of tie in together perfectly with all the questions I wanted to actually
Yeah,
ask
if you
you
can
anyways.
follow a loop, I
Yeah,
guess it's
for sure. Like I have
perfect.
my notes. I have my notes. So when it comes to your arts, or all the art that you've designed for Wizards of the Coast over the
Yeah.
years, what would you say is your favorite piece?
See, like on your email, right? Like you had that. I was thinking about it, and I get asked that one quite often.
Mhm.
And I'd like to say that's not a fair question. I love everything equally. Right? Like,
But does it change sometimes on mood? Like if your mood is
oh
really good
yeah.
one
Well,
day?
no, like each one has its moment, right? Like each
Mhm.
one, like you're spending. So a painting, even if it's an illustration for somebody else, it's not like some personal thing. Um, it it's like a snapshot of time. Like there's memory and everything that was going on and everything that you're having to do to think about, like that one image that you're doing kind of like runs them all in really super special. So it's hard to gather which one's my favorite because everyone has
Potential.
a time.
Yeah.
Yeah, like this essential moment to it. Like Plateau's like my first three for Magic the Gathering, right? It was like Plateau, Power Leak, and Clockwork Beast. And so those are really special just for that. And like but maybe my favorite, I really like a Kithian Money Changer. I like that one a lot. I really think Vertigo. Like I thought I was really good with perspective there. I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
I love Dan for its like underlining story, and then that for so many years, part of it's the printing quality, part of it's the painting itself, but like that so many people miss the fish under the boat. Like
Yeah.
I love that. That like later on it comes back and go and informs you like as an image, and I like that. So like there's all these things that have these moments, and even like real recent, like I wish, I'm kind of sad it's gone now, but the Brainstone painting. I
Oh,
love that
right.
painting. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that's
And
like,
that's new too.
yeah, yeah. I love that one. I think it's like, I think it was a really, really good painting, right? Um, but yeah, every one of them has like a moment to for me. So they all tie. And some of them grow even, further. Like I really liked Flare. Flare I thought was really freaking cool. Um, and part of the reason I like that, like, or Holy Light, comes at the same
Oh,
time.
yeah.
I did those, relatively at the same time, and they reflect this idea in my, or at least to me, like the idea was kind of bound by my upbringing with like religion and stuff, right?
Hmm.
Which it's not supposed to be, but that's like what's kind of informed the idea. Like Flair originally on the, if there's a photograph of it somewhere, and I've got a scan somewhere of the whole card, but like on the back of it is written Wrath of God. So it was originally supposed to be Wrath of God, changed to Flare,
Huh.
right? Yeah,
That is
yeah.
fascinating.
Which
I was
which that happens all the time. Sometimes like they get changed around, but
oh,
like so
see.
that was part of the thought process in that
Wow.
painting, and it
That's
works with Flare,
that
like so.
actually reminds me of a question that I really wanted to ask you, and
Yeah,
that was how didn't actually send this in the email, but how do Wizards of the Coast actually come up with the idea for the cards for artists to actually draw? Like, do they tell you ahead of time, hey, this is the name of the card, and that's it? Or do they tell you, hey, this is the name of the card, this is kind of what we want on it?
it's different now. In the
Okay.
beginning, right? Like Jesper would call us up on the phone because, like, the internet wasn't like quite really real.
Hmm.
It was just starting, right? Like it's messed up. And this will also explain the size of the paintings, everything, because all our technology is really young. Um, it's young now, but still. So like I'd get a phone call from Jesper, and Jesper would like read off a list of names. And that's all it was. Like you'd read a bunch and go like pick 5 or pick 3, and I'd go, oh, that I guess that sounds kind of cool. This one sounds interesting. That sounds interesting.
So just the name, that's it.
And in the very beginning, it was just the name.
Wow. So a lot
So
of
like,
creativity went into like when you had to actually come up with cards back then, you had to be more creative because all you
yeah, well,
had was a name to go off of really then.
yeah, I don't know if it's any more creative. It's like a different kind of creative because
Hmm.
like there's something really nice about art direction. Art direction is
Right.
awesome. Um, and it varies from like director to director and stuff, but like having those stop points really allows you to, the part of the job of illustration is, yes, you're telling a story, but there's a point to it, and there's these things that people want, right? Like,
Hmm.
so, and you have to figure out how to interpret that and work it with like your voice, but to get what they want. And that's there's a lot in that too. But yeah, like in the very beginning, it was probably more. It's not probably because it was just names. You just got to riff and play, but Magic didn't exist, right? Like, or Magic the Gathering didn't exist at that time. It didn't have like that whole world structure that was built up. So just the type of making, I think, is different.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's a good answer. Like, so
Yes.
if you could go back in time, would there be any cards that you would redo with
Okay.
just a yeah?
Yeah. Yeah. I hate Power League.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Hmm.
it's just anatomically crappy. Like, so I don't like that one very much. I'd probably paint a plateau that was more a plateau than a mesa plateau.
Hmm.
That might be something to do. Um, yeah, like Yeah, I mean, I think they're all like exactly what they should have been for that moment.
That's a good
Um,
answer.
no,
Because like for
that's a
me,
cop
because I
out,
wouldn't like,
but
because
thank
I
you.
love your art, I wouldn't change any of them. That's why,
No, no, like
of course, you're gonna have
what's
new
the point of
ideas.
going back and doing?
Yeah.
I mean, like, yeah, it, yeah, like you can't do anything different than what you did. So I
Why
guess,
change it? Yeah.
yeah, well, I mean, because sometimes choices are wrong. Well, like, yeah, you can't change it.
Hmm.
You can like own into what you make and learn from things that you do and move forward. But at the same time, right, like I'm asked to do recreations and things or reimaginations of paintings, and I totally do them different. Because yeah, like yeah, you do. I guess sometimes you get the opportunity. So
And are these people who ask for custom cards, I imagine?
yeah. Like sometimes I'll get commissions for, you know, sometimes I get commissions that are like I'd like it exactly like what it is.
Hmm.
Um, which which those aren't as fun, right? Like to, and I find it hard to copy some of those things because like with the watercolor does what watercolor wants to do. You can control some of the chaos to it, but like the way pigments seed, and things like that depend on, you know, the paint, the manufacturer, the grade,
Right.
you know, the temperature of the water, some other stuff, all sorts of weird things. Um, which you can kind of control, but like some of those you can't, like the paint that I had 30 years ago, right? Like I can't get that paint now.
Hmm.
There's a different ground of ochre, a mineral in there, you know, like
Oh,
a
yeah.
different. So even though like the recipe is going to be the same, you know, there's always these small variations.
So the recipes is going to be the same, but the ingredients are different.
Yeah, just slightly.
Hmm.
Yeah, because you know, maybe it's a different batch of mineral that's going into it, you know, like from a different mining place. Like let's say if we're using like a cobalt or something like that, like a blue, or even like a yellow ochre. But like different companies have different like variations of binder to pigment, or some will add whitening if it's a cheaper grade, you know,
Mhm.
to stretch the pigments and things. And so like all these things like matter. And then most of those, unless they're like chemically derived, are, you know, they're mined out of the ground or they're picked, you know. And so, you know, whatever, you know, like that batch of ochre that's being dug up, you know, that batch that was dug up there is never going to be there again. So like this
Hmm.
next one that somebody gets is going to be different, you know, from like whatever the earth was going through or whatever the planet was experiencing.
Now, has your technique changed at all? Like you're talking about the ingredients, it's different now from when you first started painting. Do you find technology has changed some of the ways that you actually create your art now for Wizards of the
Oh yeah.
Coast?
Yeah, and in general, like yeah, for Wizards, for like when I work for Onyx Path, it does. I like it because you can actually, you know, you can color correct, you can like, you know, if you need to make alterations, it's easier to come in onto the computer sometimes to do it. Sometimes building sketches or building the work, you can do some of it in the computer, you know, and pull it out, or some people work directly everything in it. So I mean it as far as like the technology part, that's just added like a extra paintbrush or an extra tool, you know, that you can use to make stuff. I mean, I do most of what I do is traditional because I like the physicality of
Mhm.
it, and I like the body connection in it. And I'm sure there's a connection to like you know, to me, to the screen in a way too. But like it's a different thing. Like, and probably because I grew up like, with brushes and pencils. That's my comfort zone as opposed to like working on a monitor.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
That,
No, that like, so it's a little
yeah.
different, but it's a bit of the same too.
Yeah. I mean, it's just another tool to use,
Right.
really. Like it's another pencil. It just, or, it's another camera, or it's another thing like that. I mean, like one of the things I like doing when I make sketches is I'll draw that stuff out and I'll scan it into my scanner, right? And then I'll sometimes, blow it up or change size, change shapes of the drawing in the computer, and then print it back out and draw into it again. Which is kind of like, I'll collage some of it on the machine sometimes. Not all the times, but sometimes. But it used to be, before I had a computer, I would go to like Kinko's or the copy store, right? And I just blow stuff up and cut it out and collage stuff together. So it kind of replaced a copy machine for me in a weird way.
Oh yeah, I guess it would. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, I don't really like collaging on the machine, because like when you do it physically, there's a different connection. It's like when you write. God, and this is like geriatric to say too, probably, but like it's, when you like physically handwrite a thing, and like I owe people letters. I'm horrible at physically handwriting things, but I write stories too, right? But like, you have a different connection. Your brain has a different connection going from the pencil to the paper, as opposed to like, a typewriter, like, or a keyboard to the monitor. Your brain takes different steps. And so, like physically cutting something and moving and slapping it down, is a slightly different thought process. And then you have the random of like throwing it down and going like, oh, that just landed on a pile of crap. That looks great. So I don't know what the point to that was. I'm so sorry.
No, I enjoyed it. Regardless, I enjoyed it. So Wizard of the Coast, you have been working with them all the way from alpha and beta, and I think you had a quite a large gap. The last set, from my research, before you started back with Modern Horizons 2, was the Lorwyn Eventide era block.
Yeah, that was the last bit. That was right when
the financial crisis happened. Right
well,
around
no,
that.
I started teaching. Financial crisis was I didn't, right? Because I couldn't bear them. But like, my wife and I had kids. We had kids and started a family, and like little people like to eat, and they like constant, like, they need to be clothed and all that stuff. But yeah, like they like to eat regularly, and real food and all that stuff. So like that's when I started teaching, actually. Also, I think that's also when, well, I wasn't needed at Wizards, or to do artwork. I think it was right there, it was going into a different path.
So what was the catalyst that brought you back to working with Wizards of the Coast?
Oh, well, I quit teaching, right?
Oh, okay.
And I've always been doing like part-time illustration or so. So I have the longest running is with like White Wolf and Onyx Path, right? Onyx Path taking in some of that, but like I've worked with them forever, and I really like them. But when I stopped teaching, and then there's some like whatever story to that too, but I was trying to think of like what I do, right? Like oh crap, I'm not teaching. What to do? And I moved back up to Washington at that time too. We were in the Midwest. And I was like, oh yeah, like I do illustration. I've been doing these things anyhow, and I wanted to try. So I think it was like the Las Vegas convention maybe like 3 or 4 years ago or something. I started talking with Cynthia Shepard, and then I showed them my portfolio, and then like, and most of what I've always done is fantasy anyhow, or like some sort of like weird fantasy to myself. Not in a like a weird way, but like like the the paintings or whatever. Um, but like, and I had Cynthia look at my portfolio, and she made suggestions, and so I took those back in my head at least, and I like did another round of artwork and another stuff, and so I started trying to work on like, I try to better what you're doing, right? And kind of tailor it a little bit more. So yeah, like I openly kind of sought it out, because like I for the longest time, and this is kind of weird to say, I didn't know what like the work that I did for Wizards or Magic, right? Like I didn't know what it meant to anybody. I'm relatively like hermitish, so I mean I have a lot of friends. Right now doesn't count because it's right now in time and space with with what's going on. But yeah, like yeah, I didn't know, like, until I started teaching, actually, I didn't know the like ramifications of what I did in the early 90s was like the artwork for Magic. Because I'd have people coming in to my classes because they knew me like from there, right? Like, and so that started like pinging stuff in my head. And then when was it? I don't remember when it was now, but like at some point I think Daniel Chang contacted me, and he got me to go to like some conventions and stuff. So he in a lot of ways got me to get back into this. And then with those conventions I'd have interactions with people, and those were amazing. Like in the very beginning of when Magic was just starting, they'd send us out on the road too for like, we'd go to comic book stores and sign things. And I think it was like in Ohio, and this little kid and his mom came in and they signed some cards for him. And then, like 25 freaking years later, I'm in Ohio again at one of these like GPs, and that same kid comes in with the same freaking card, and like he kept that, that moment for that long. And like it's like little things like that like really started like going like, oh wow, and then there'd be people would tell me about Dan, how they wouldn't see it, or they thought Dan meant boat for like years. And then they'd see the fish, and like how some people like, it scared them in a Jaws way. And just, yeah, that I made something and was part of something, that has affected so many people, that in its own way was like, oh, and when it came back to illustration, I was like, oh, this is what I do. This is where I'm known. And this is like, and it's not like my artwork's not necessarily like everybody else's stuff. It's not the same. Like, I mean, it's starting to take in more like, I guess, traditional fantasy, because it is kind of like what's wanted, or what's like, for the job at hand, right? Like it's what's also kind of needed, because this has a story to it now, or the Magic does. But yeah, all of that is kind of like what drew me back. I mean, there are a lot of people, like people that like the artwork that has stayed with, like I said, Daniel, and that's kept it like, so like since I started, and even though like for years I was teaching and just teaching, like this work or this body has stayed with me, you know. And when I came back to illustration, I was like, oh, you know, like, but I have this body of work, and that's so like I wanted to come back to it. And on top of that, like, you have just like tremendous artists working for Magic. So it's a really high level standard to be back to. So like I'm really happy like that I've been able to do that. And you know that I was walking back like I've been. So yeah, it's kind of cool.
No, that honestly, that is probably the most beautiful note to end this on. I love that story about the kid 25 years later with the same card, cherishes it that much. And honestly, I cherish this Mattcast. Thank you so much, Drew, for coming on and chatting with me. Your art is very inspirational. It's one of the reasons why people love to play the game. It's not just for the game, which is beautiful, but it's also the artwork and some of the artwork that you make.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you very much. And thank you to everyone who has watched this Mattcast. Remember, find Drew. He is on Instagram as well. And I'm sure if you go through your collection, you'll find some fantastic pieces by Drew Tucker. Thank you very much again, Drew. And I'll talk to you again real soon.
All right, thank you, man. All right.
Being a patron will help me produce more market movers and add to the funds that I will use for my random buys, and also to my coffee fund, because I drink a lot of coffee for these videos. And here you can see a link below in the description that will give you all the tiers and what you get in each tier. So I hope you guys click and think about joining. And with that, I'll see you next video. Think about supporting the channel in that way. If not, subscribe, like, leave a comment, and I will see you again in the next video.